So next couple of minutes.
Hello.
Hi, Gabriella, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well. Thanks for joining in. And yeah, as soon as you're ready, we can start. Yeah.
Yes, sorry, I was held up at a meeting a moment ago, but it's great to be here and I'm ready whenever you are.
Great to have you here and lots to learn from you with your experience in building a community, hosting live events, and now I think nonprofit as well. Sure.
Great.
Great. So this is a monthly community builder event, and we take various topics around community building online. And yeah, today the topic is what are the practical tips and strategies for community manager to stay ahead of the curve and build a growing community around their brand. I'm Ankur. I'm the co-founder of UUKI, which is a white label community platform for creators, brand, and businesses. We help you set up your own community directly on your website or an app, help you grow engagement in the community with events, discussions, and also monetize it with memberships. Now, we do have integrations with different platforms for you to sort of cross promote on these platforms and build out your community. Yeah, so that's about me and talking about, I think, Sneha, you can move to the next slide. So why did we choose this topic? As we've seen on G2, we've seen the reviews on community platform have doubled in the last couple of years, starting to on 20. The reviews have almost doubled. The amount of community platforms available for us to build on has also gone up significantly. We've seen increase in number of jobs for community managers, community builders in different companies, and it's not just a niche now. It's a requirement for sort of companies, even brands, to have a presence online and convert their audience into a thriving community. We want to touch on the fact that how you can sort of use that community to in the future convert them as customers, and they can help you out in sort of building out your presence online as well. So I think Sneha, you can. Yeah. I think Gabriella has experience working in different sectors, tech, media, arts, and culture as well. She's working at Grapevine currently in the philanthropy and not-for-profits segment. And prior to that, she worked at Bramble as well as on the Toronto International Festival. And it's a diverse sort of area you worked on. You want to talk about your journey? How did you get up into get into community building, and how was that sort of journey like? You want to learn from that?
Sure, yeah, definitely. I feel like so many community managers that I kind of fell into it a bit accidentally. So my background is in TV production and film. So I worked as on set as a coordinator and logistics person, and then I got into film, particularly in the exhibition side. So I was working at the Toronto International Film Festival. I'm based in Toronto for over 6 years, and I was really interested in how people came together to watch film and how they used it as a sort of agent to connect with each other, maybe people who were different than them or had different sort of experiences, and how it was this really unifying thing. So that kind of led me to run my own event called Supper Club Cinema, which was this event where strangers would come together and eat and watch film. And I got really obsessed with the idea of this film as a tool for community building. And then that kind of led me into my first community manager role, which was for an organization called Artery.
Okay.
And basically what they were is a sort of Airbnb couch surfing, but for arts and culture. So it would connect local hosts and artists to co-create these house shows, essentially. And then from there, I worked at Bramble, which was a sort of an arm of Artery, where for online events to make them more interactive. And now I'm at Grapevine, where I'm currently the community manager, and I'm working with, we have about 40,000 people on our platform using Grapevine. So it's really exciting, and it's in a bit of a different space in that it's bringing together sort of change makers, people in their communities who want to pool their donations together and do kind of greater good as a collective. So it's really taking the lens off of the individual in the philanthropy sector and putting it on the collective to make philanthropy more accessible to people. So that's the work I'm doing now, and I absolutely love it. But yeah, definitely kind of fell in as a bit of an accident, which I know is super common.
Yes, absolutely. I think we've had experience in different segments. So building sort of a film club, if I may say,
Yep.
to arts and culture, then into events, now into non-profit. I think the common line being people come together and work around a goal on all these segments. So that's how I think the community angle kick in. So I think, Sneha, we can move to the next slide. Yeah, so yeah, as I was talking, so why community building has become very important after the pandemic, and we were forced to stay in different places and sort of isolated and also connected online in a way, and that pushed a wave of products which will help us connect sort of remotely. And I think community platform played a role where we could sort of set up a way we can have an online connection of some sort and then sort of have a relationship in a longer term. So how have you seen the space evolve in the last couple of years? So before the pandemic and after, how has the community space evolved? So.
Oh yeah, it's completely evolved in the last couple of years. I completely agree. I mean, it's why I'm in the space. Like, I got into it because of the pandemic, really, and as horrible as that was and everything, it did kind of make community a lot more accessible in a way because of all these tools. And even Grapevine, where I work now, Giving Circles, the model that we're sort of the infrastructure for, existed. I mean, it's existed for in cultures, this idea of giving collectively forever, and especially came in the US, grew this sort of movement in the 80s, but it's been around for way before that. And these Giving Circles, when the pandemic started, that's when Grapevine kind of emerged, because we were giving these Giving Circles the ability to do their work online because of the pandemic. So they were meeting in person, and they were collecting checks from everyone, and they didn't have a central way to communicate. So Grapevine allowed them to, given the pandemic, still be able to come together and do their work. So that's kind of how it evolved. So that's just one example of how really clear where I work right now, why it kind of came to be. And for me personally, as a community manager, having these communities, like the work that you're doing, I think your team reached out to me maybe a couple years ago. I met them because of this idea of like, oh, I can join groups for community managers, and it's how I've learned and grown. So it's completely transformed my professional life. And yeah, so I couldn't agree more that it's changed drastically in the last 2 years. 3 years, I wouldn't even have thought of community in this way if I would have only thought of it as this in-person thing, if these tools hadn't emerged.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I think the geography doesn't matter right now. So your idea and the thought you're rallying behind is this the most important thing. And we have tools now to connect from anywhere. So it doesn't matter. You're not around a singular table to discuss ideas. You can have it over Zoom. There are multiple platforms for you to connect from Discord if you're doing it real time, and others as well. So talking about if you want to sort of say as a brand invest in community building, what does the role entail? So how do you decide what is the task for a community manager, and what do you do as a brand to sort of build out that space for you? You start off with one role. How do you build out a community segment or a community vertical in the company?
Yeah. I think the community is so essential, especially when you think about like your marketing team and your product team. You really need that middle. I always think of it a bit as like that middle person between the community and your internal team, to be that voice of the community. And most importantly, almost to be that like empathetic voice of the community, because sometimes I find the product team can think like, oh, this is easy. Why are they confused about how you use this part of it? Or the marketing team will be like, we're just going to, we're going to put them in this campaign and send them emails. And, all these things are essential and you need those voices as well. But I really think the community team can be that voice of like, you know what? This is why they're having trouble with it. And these are some examples of what people have said to me and why I think we should approach it this way. Or, maybe I think that the sending that email might to all those people might not be the best approach because they actually don't have context yet for this. And you really need to be that voice, I think. And sometimes those teams are really focused on their goals, which is totally understandable, but it's really essential to have that conduit who can kind of straddle the community, but also understanding the internal needs and also maybe your growth metrics and what you need to do as a company to exist and to expand, while also being able to really be that voice for the community. So that's why I personally think it's really essential. And you're really advocating for both of those sides, for both your team and also the community, and kind of being that ability to make both of those things work together.
Got it. So there are two ways. So if you're just starting up and building out a community, you're there trying to sort of give a voice to your community members. When you join as a community manager in already a build out product or any build out space, you need to find the voice. So what are the steps you can take to actually find that voice? So how do you, yeah.
Interesting. So finding the voice of your community, essentially. Yeah. I mean, I think that you need to speak to people on your team and see what they think the voice of the community is, especially if it's it's an established community, because I think it's really interesting to hear how people on your team are interpreting it. And then I always do when I first start a role, I'm like, who are some people in the community you think I should connect with and talk to? And I'll just jump in and meet with those people and see what they think the community is, because it's interesting to hear where the truth lies, which sometimes is a bit in the middle, So I think that it's really important to understand how your colleagues are viewing the community and also what the community members are getting out of it. So I always try and dig into the community. Maybe that's speaking with people. Maybe it's just getting in wherever your community is hosted, the forums, seeing what people are saying, joining the flow of how your community is right now. I think that's one of the first things I do is like join as a member, see what I'm getting, seeing what's resonating with me, what's confusing to me. I think you really have to absorb yourself in the community and dive right in and like be thrown in a bit into uncomfortable situations. Like I got put on meetings with community members where they were asking about the product in my like second week in my new role. And I didn't even really fully understand the product. And as kind of scary as it was, it really helped me to understand what was confusing to them, what they wanted. And so I would say also challenging yourself to be put in some more intimidating conversations that are less just like, oh, what do you think of our community? But more like people asking you like hard questions about like the product. I actually think that's really useful.
Got it. So cutting through the clutter and finding what they actually feel about your product is the voice of the community, I think, as you explained quickly. And I think we can move to the next slide, Sneha. So coming on to your sort of work right now, you're working on nonprofit community building. How is the space evolving, and how is it building a community in a nonprofit space? Is it different from a general brand? What makes it more exciting? I've seen a lot of community managers now sort of building an online community of people who want to donate, who want to invest in the space. And what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think for me, the most exciting part with what I'm doing right now, which is this model of philanthropy called Giving Circles, where it's, as I said, it's this at its core, it's a community-centric model. And so it's really cool to be part of a product that is supporting something that at its foundations is community-led fully. And so the entire strategy of our company is community-led. Like, we are the kind of center of it. And that's just really exciting for me because I've worked, other roles you have, it's a bit more of a push to get your company, or especially your founders, executives, to see sometimes the value in community. And I feel like it's literally the opposite of where I am, where it's fully what we're doing. And it because it's so reflective of the work we're doing, which is this fully communal decision-making collective experience. So that's really exciting to me. And I think that community is about bringing people together, like-minded people, however you want to view it. And so when you can do that and also have people do good in the process, which is what we're doing, is we're bringing people together to connect, community build within their, their sort of own where they're located. And also through doing that, they're giving back to causes that they care about. So I think it's just such a cool sort of marriage of those two things. And I think that especially now in the kind of climate of the world, people don't really view themselves as being able to be philanthropists. They feel like they don't have enough money to be in that space. And I think this model is really disrupting that idea and it's sort of anyone can be a philanthropist in this model because you can come together collectively and make a big impact. So I think that's really exciting in the nonprofit space right now, being a bit of a disruptor in it, in that it's not gated by just wealthy individuals. The power of the collective, the power of the community can change that space. So I think that's incredibly exciting.
Absolutely. I think the cause that you're rallying behind and the community aspect, making the decision as a group or as one community is more powerful, sort of. And I think if you sort of rally in together, even with the money you have, I think you can sort of, in an organized fashion, create a more impact, as opposed to one person sort of donating randomly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And also donating randomly is so transactional, right? And people want to feel connected to what they're doing, giving to. And I think this model really allows you to take out some of that transactional feeling and have it be more of a community building experience. Anyway, yes, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think coming to the next question, and how do you onboard members to your community, and how do you make it easier to actually for members or people who are interested in your community to join in. We can talk about the technical aspect as well. So it depends. So if you're starting small, what kind of onboarding experience do you desire versus when you scale up? Is there a change in terms of the onboarding experience? How do you make it easier for people to discover and sort of join you as a community member?
Yeah, I mean, I would say it shouldn't necessarily be a different experience as you scale. I think as much as you can, I'm learning to put those foundations in early so it can scale and you're not having to rejig everything you do is really key. And keeping that spirit of it feeling personalized is really important as you scale. So I would say view it as the same thing. And as I kind of mentioned before too, I think it's really important when you're coming into a new community, for example, to sign up as a community member and really examine that current flow that's happening and to start there. And to get from, wherever the documentation is for those email sequences that people are getting, look at those, get that documentation and add in your notes and run that by the team and all that stuff. I think that's really important. And then always approaching it with iterating. So I had my initial thoughts as someone new to the community of what I found challenging, and then listening to the community and really focusing on putting that into the flow is essential. We have in our Slack channel at work, we have when people want to pause their membership or subscription, there's a place for them to tell us why, and we get alerted of all those reasons. So really paying attention to that and looping in other people in your team where you can highlight, hey, this is a theme coming up, like we need to look at this. It's really important to have it be visual for your whole team as well. And something also based on sort of the feedback you get from your community, making it really clear what their first action is. So something that we have people joining our community as members. We also have people joining our community to lead groups. So we have these different sort of segments of our members, but also leaders of our group who are basically members taking on more responsibility. So for our leaders, really trying to clarify for them what their first step is, because they're kind of raising their hand to help take on more. But they don't always know what that means. So just really trying to be clear about why they're there and what you need from them and why it's so exciting that they are sort of stepping up. So I think that's essential. And then just for anyone interested in sort of the tools we use tools like HubSpot for our sort of onboarding. We also use a tool called Customer.io for people once they've sort of joined our community. And then a lot of our community right now is hosted on Grapevine. We have, and I think we're going to get to a bit later, but we've created special pages for them to interact with each other. So that's sort of how we're doing it right now. There's definitely challenges with it and positives, of course, as well. But in terms of our onboarding flow, we utilize HubSpot and Customer.io right now.
Got it. I think one of the main challenges I've seen while onboarding members is when you have to actually shift from one platform to another. So, as you build out, you think an X platform is good enough for me. And then you scale up, you realize that I think we have to scale up to Y. And then I think moving sort of paid members to a different platform is a challenging experience.
Yes. Yep. And it's so important you get that onboarding right, because that's their first interaction with you and sets the tone, and it's also where they're getting a lot of information, but you don't want to overwhelm them. So it's really approaching it's a really important thing to focus on and have your team weigh in on,
Yeah, it's like inviting them to your first party. So in a way, and you want that experience or the invite to be so just right.
Totally.
Yeah.
And one thing I realized I didn't get to the documentation side. So we have for our community right now, for our leaders specifically, we onboard them with sort of training and that kind of thing. And I use Google Slides for that. And so one thing I would just say is use a tool that you can update and change, and that doesn't impact, you're not having to constantly resend new things to the community. I love using Google Docs because I can change it and I can iterate on it, and I don't need to send them a bunch of new links. So yeah, with that spirit of iteration, use a tool that allows you to do that.
Yeah, keep a tool that's simple and dynamic. So in a way, yeah. I think we can move to the next question. So all the participants, if you have any questions, just drop them in the chat, or later on after we've done the session, you can sort of join in on a video and ask the question directly as well. Coming to the next question. Yeah, so one of the most important thing is, how do you get we start with sort of one-to-many kind of communications, then we move to the many-to-many kind of interactions in the community. How do you sort of create a peer group in the community which is able to share knowledge and sort of contribute sort of to the growth of each other in terms of creating informal knowledge sharing network? And what are your thoughts on this? So, how do you foster this in the community?
Yeah, so something I got really interested in just through learning from other community managers was the idea of a learning cohort with your members. So as I mentioned, we have all these people leading our giving circles. And so what we've done is we've put them in peer learning cohorts based on kind of when they became a leader of their group, so that they can have a network of people at sort of the same juncture in their leadership journey to ask questions to and to learn from. So basically kind of how Grapevine looks is in this way. It's sort of like a closed Facebook group or LinkedIn group. So they, once they become leaders in that onboarding flow, I also invite them into their cohort. And I give them an action basically right away just to introduce themselves, and then to use it as a space for asking questions and sharing knowledge. And we also there's a sidebar in there with upcoming events that we do just for our leaders. So that's been really helpful for people to learn from each other, and for me to learn as well. Like, I learned so much from that community, as a community manager, I'm very in those and seeing every time someone posts or comments. So I learn a lot, and because of that, I'll program workshops based on what people are talking about, panels, all that kind of stuff. So I'll know who to reach out to sometimes if I'm like, oh, this person's doing something really interesting here. And I need help on this. I'll reach out to them. And so it's really helpful in that way. So I've really found this peer support model really encouraging. We don't have like a general forum for our community. So this sort of is that, but it allows it to be a bit more targeted for people. So it's like they're actually interacting with people who they'll get a lot from, opposed to just really general questions. So it feels really exciting for people to be in these. And I think for them, it's really nice to know they're not alone in this leadership journey, because so many of them, it's their first time leading a giving circle. And it's cool for them to see like, oh, there's lots of other people doing this, facing the same issues. So we use Grapevine for that. And we're building it out more with because it's not really what the platform is for necessarily. Like, the platform hosts giving circles, but we're kind of rejigging it to have these private pages for our community to interact in these models. So we're building out some more community tools within that. But it's a really, I think a cohort approach is really something people should think about when they're building their community and looking for ways to have knowledge sharing happen.
Sure. So quick question on that. So the cohorts you're running, the leaders you invite to the cohort, are they ones choosing the topic for the cohort, or is it you or other community builders choosing the topic for that particular cohort, or is it pre-decided by Grapevine?
Yeah, it's kind of general. Like we say to them, you're being invited into this cohort of other leaders who started being a leader at the same time as you. It's a space for you to ask questions, share your learning, share what you're working on. So it's pretty general, but I would love to dig in a bit more. Yeah, I feel like we have the kind of leveraging these groups a bit more is something I really want to look at. Right now, it's pretty general.
Got it. So it's a private space for everyone who's evolved as a part of the community to interact and share their opinion on different topics. Once in a while, host events. So, yeah.
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Got it. I think that's a good start to actually foster sort of interaction in between themselves and share the knowledge.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think this is related to what we are doing right now. How do you manage a calendar of community events in, say, you're running a community, and what is too much and what is too little? So in terms of events, and what is valuable? So if there was a time in, I think within last 1 year, every day there used to be an event around community building. So I think we've sort of plateaued from that, and now only essential kind of events are happening, and even a topic that provide a lot of value to you are happening. So what are your thoughts in terms of sort of running events for a community? What is too much? What do you think is an ideal sort of length of an event versus how many times in a month or say quarterly? How do you look at that?
Yeah, I mean, I am only one person, so it's hard because events do take a lot of prep, generally I always say like do the heavy lifting at the start so that get it out of the way, prepare really well. But also remember, you're only one person in my case. So you do have to be, I think, really strategic. I think the way we think about events is, so we run monthly member mixers, we run a panel once a month, and we run like a workshop for our leaders once a month. If something comes up, I try and be, have the flexibility to add stuff. But I think those are three kind of things we're always focusing on. And I sort of look at that as one being sort of a growth channel for us. The panel is a way to engage and bring in new people into our community and to Grapevine in general. Workshop is really to train and help get our leaders feeling supported. And then this member mixer is for engagement, getting people excited about their group and that kind of thing. So I would say that's really how we're focusing on it right now. And I would say to manage it, as I mentioned, I really try and do the heavy lifting early, do all the prep early so that by the time the event comes up, I'm really just reminding the people who are involved to be there at the right time. And I also have like a checklist that's a flow now that I've built out of when I send certain emails to the, I'll send the email to the speaker, then a couple of days before I'll send the follow-up. Like I have, by building it out, it's really useful so you're not having to add extra work to remember, when do I need to do this or that? And then also something I find really helpful is to assign people on your team really specific roles for how you need support. So instead of taking it all on yourself, getting people from your team to help support you, which is really, they support me with like the execution of the event, and I just make it really clear what I need their support on, and they know what to do, because you won't be able to do it all on your own if you don't have other people on your team or whatever it is. So I would say planning is really, really essential, and being organized.
Got it. I think organizing everything beforehand and setting up the tools, I guess people use different tools, or you can have a simple email blast to users, set up some kind of automation or manually send them follow-up emails, and sort of send them a reminder to both the speakers as well as the listeners about the event. I think I think 2 or 3 events a month, I think is sufficient, I guess, to engage both the leaders as well as people who've just joined in.
Yeah. And just be strategic with why you're doing them. Like, if there's a purpose and there's strategy, then yeah, you should be putting your time and resources into that and making it robust. But if it's just for the sake of it, I would reevaluate that.
Got it. I think it depends on the community you're building and the kind of engagement. What is your goal for that particular event?
Yeah.
So online workshops and seminars are sort of now very common and part of a larger campaign to attract a broader audience for a product. So what is the right fit now as people are now meeting in real time, face to face? Where do virtual events come in? How do you, if as a company you want to do a mix of virtual as well as live event, how do you see that? And are there companies who would just do virtual events? So we as a company have only done virtual events till now, but how do you balance it out? So what is the new hybrid norm?
Yeah, I think that for us, because our community is all over the United States, when we organize events, we do need to do a lot of them virtually. We're a small team. I'm in Canada, for example. So it's the nature of it is we do some, for the events we organize, we do virtual events, but we encourage our community, our giving circles, these sort of micro communities, to organize in person or hybrid, whatever they want, or just virtually if that's what they prefer. But I think for us, when we organize like these events that I mentioned, when we do our panels and our member mixer and all that kind of stuff, I try and really communicate why it's virtual. I think that people in our community, at least, can sometimes have a bit of a triggered response to hearing it's virtual. They're like, I don't want to meet virtually, I want to meet in person. And so to sort of get ahead of that, I'll always say, this member mixer is with our members from giving circles all across the United States. So to connect you with other people involved all over the United States, we're going to do it virtually. So sort of framing it as this benefit opposed to so people understand, oh, it's so that I can meet people all over. I get that now. Because I do think some people have a bit of I don't want to do this anymore, So I think just how you frame it and be really conscious of that early on is important. Yeah. And then what we also do is we try and make it really easy for our community, our giving circles, to self-organize in-person events. So we give them tools to organize in person, so they can do that if they want to, and often they really want to, especially for giving circles where it's such a local community-centric experience. I mean, we have giving circles that are cause-based and they have people from all over the United States in them, but a lot of ours are community-based or location-based. So people want to meet in person, and we make it easy for them to self-organize and do that. But for events that we run, it's essential, because we're not gonna, there's no point in us sending someone to a city to host a panel just so it's in person. We have so many tools now to make it virtual and make it an amazing event. So just be conscious of your audience, and that if they are resistant or sensitive to virtual events now, just given some of the baggage that's gone along with it, and just really be conscious of your framing of the event so you can really pull out why it's exciting and why virtual makes sense.
I think it is much easier to host a virtual event, and also sort of to find the returns of the event. So ability to measure a return for a virtual event is relatively easier as compared to an in-person event, and there are logistics involved in terms of hosting a live event. Absolutely.
Totally. And one of the things we started to do as a way to sort of increase the ability for people to connect at virtual events that we host is we afterwards share the profiles of the attendees. So people sign up on our platform and they kind of set up a profile, they link their social channels and they can say a bit about them. So we'll afterwards send a follow-up email and say, here's who was at the event, here's their profile on Grapevine, connect with them, reach out with them. So it's a nice way to also really connect people afterwards and really help with that networking experience. We encourage hybrid events as well for people self-organizing. They're tricky, we've done a lot of our members aren't really going to invest in a hop-in or that's just not our community. So we try and give them tips for it, which is really having one person be assigned to the people online during the live event and to try and find a space that really is conducive to having AV. So some of our groups will organize at a library because the AV is already there. So we try and when we suggest hybrid, we try and give them really good tips for making it successful. But yeah, hybrid is a whole thing, and we're everyone's kind of learning about that as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think you're right on the point where virtual events are definitely the norm now with the tools available. And if you want to work on a hybrid pattern, I think you have to maintain a sync between your virtual as well as your face-to-face event. Yeah, we have one, I think one of our participants, and she's raised her hand. Benita, if you want to come on the video and ask your question, you can. Yeah.
Okay, can I actually just ask my question without turning on my video?
Sure, it's all right. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's really, really great to have you and listen to you, Gabby. The question I have is based on everything you've said. So everything you said is just based on active community. Sometimes we are faced with situations where we get employed into a very dormant community, and it's like a very, really, really big task for you to try to get the community active. So my question is, because I'm faced with a problem, I got employed into a community that's actually dormant. That's because before I was employed, there was no community activities. The community management was really, really poor, and other people stopped checking in. They stopped asking questions. They just stopped, engaging in the community. So my question is, how do you revive such community? What kind of event can you put in place? Sometimes you just drop messages, you try to create an event and no one engage in it.
Yeah, definitely. I feel in the past, that's always been my experience, which is why this current role I'm in is it's the opposite problem where I'm I can't keep up with this, which is its own challenge, but I completely understand what you're saying. That has always been my experience prior. Can I just ask what kind of community it is? I'm just curious, what is it, the community exactly?
Okay, so it's a crypto project. It's a blockchain project actually, and most of these blockchain projects are based on communities across social media where you have to post, update, write, and do all sorts of social media stuff just to keep the community engaged. Yeah, so it's a blockchain project.
Okay, gotcha. I think that, and this is something that comes up a lot with our giving circles, because in the model that we launch sometimes giving circles in different communities, and we invite members in, and then we wait for those members to sort of raise their hand to help lead the group. So sometimes there's this lag between when members are in and then leaders are in place, and then our leaders are everyone's quiet. How do we re-engage them? How do we do that? So I think that's sort of top of mind for me. So if I could pull some lessons that we've learned there, one thing I always suggest to people is to figure out where like sort of the watering hole of your community is and really focus on that one thing. Sometimes as community managers, you feel like you need to tap into all these different areas, but I would really focus on one place where your community, figuring out where they like to be and where that makes sense. And maybe for your community, maybe that's Twitter, you know, I know this is just an example, you know where your community is, but if it is a place like Twitter, utilizing Twitter Spaces or whatever it is, and really trying to focus on one thing and not spread yourself too thin. And also just trying to get things moving quickly. So whatever that might look like, making that like a really clear action. Maybe it's having them, I don't know, join a space on, say it's a Twitter or something, like just one really clear action that you can have them do right away. And then also, and even if that's a small group who come to an event or who do that, as much as you can, documenting that. So like if you do an event, taking pictures there, even if it's online, sharing images, anything that you can give people a sense of FOMO for, I think is really, really useful, because not only does it get people, oh, I missed out on this, I want to be involved in this, it also educates people on what your community is. Because sometimes I find with dormant communities, people are in there and they're just like, I actually don't know what this community is. I'm just here. I don't really know what this is. And you kind of need to focus on that education piece, and doing that through showing people through images and visual as much as you can is really, really helpful. So I would say, and also not being afraid to start small with 2 people, and like that's how it grows, you know, and that's how you set the foundations. But if you have a handful of people, saying to those people, hey, can each of you bring one person, either who's in this community already, and connect with them, bring them to the next event, and maybe incentivize them in some way. Maybe they get swag if they do that or whatever it is. But using that to grow it is really, I think, really important. And saying, if you each bring in one person to our next event, we're going to double, you know? And so just finding ways to do that, I think is really helpful. And something I say to some of our community giving circles that have gone quiet is like, the people who are active, like buddying them up with someone in the community who is maybe quiet, and being like, I'm assigning you these 5 people, you know, they've heard from me already, connect with them and introduce yourself and give them an action. Like, this is an event we're running, so I would say trying to just grow it in that really organic way through like really clear actions for people to take, and also documenting as much as you can to make people feel like they're missing out. You know, I think that is actually a real way that you can get people engaged and educated in what you're doing.
Thank you, Gabby.
Thanks, Gabby, for answering that. And that's, I think a lot of us almost, so there are less than 5% communities are really active, and even less if you, and rest of the 95% are trying to figure out ways to actually have an engagement going on in the community. I think it's useful for everyone to understand, and you never know what something can go out of fashion anytime, and people can move from one project to another. So that can happen. If you have any questions,
Ankur. Hey Gabby, good to see you. Yeah. I'm sorry about my video. I'm just commuting back to work, from work to the home, so I can't really switch it on. And so here's a very quick question, Gabby. Like, how often do you meet with your members, like one-on-one? Like, what is like a healthy interval?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's so nice to hear you. I know I can't see you, but it's great to talk to you again. So I would say I'm meeting with members every single day, and people, my Calendly link is pretty out there, and people set up meetings with me. My members have it in like our training, onboarding for our leaders on every module we have. My Calendly link is there for people to meet with me. So I make it easy for people to connect with me. And because of that, I get a lot of meetings booked where I'm meeting with the community one-on-one. But it's also like, because of that, I have to really block off time in my calendar, because that can also be a lot. But I do think it's important for you as a community manager to be really tapped into that. So if you can put your Calendly link as share it in as many places as it makes sense and get people organically connecting with you, I think that's really useful. I'll reach out to community members if I have really specific things I want to connect with them about. Like right now we're going to be building out a referral program. So I'm going to reach out to some community members and really try and understand their needs. So we do it that way. We also have a group that people can easily join called our kitchen cabinet, which are just community members who want to give us their feedback and hear about stuff we're working on and give us their feedback. So make it easy, but also remember that you need to also get work done. So block off time in your calendar if you are putting your link out there and encouraging people to connect with you. So because it can get a bit overwhelming also, but I do think being tapped in, and I'm meeting with community members. I'll probably do at least 2 meetings a day with community members.
Oh, that's awesome. Like when you meet this one-on-one people, right? So do you handpick them? Like you go with the super users, or how it works usually?
Yeah, right now for the referral program, I'm going to be going to the super users. But you're making me think I should also go to not super users about this. I actually think that's a really good idea. We don't really have pardon?
No, because we have like 3K members, so it's for me really hard to go and meet these people. So I just filter out based on few criteria. So I was just thinking here loud.
Yeah, no, definitely. We don't use, at my past roles, we've used like community CRM tools like an Orbit or something like that. I actually don't use that right now. I'm using...
That's the greatest.
Yes. So I'm using like spreadsheets where people I'm engaging with a lot, I'll mark them off as like, a super engaged person, good to have on my list for like to connect with if I have one to get information finding. But I do think that's why tools like Orbit and Common Room and what you're building on, all these things are so important, because then you can really identify those super users and those more workers or quiet people.
Yeah, that's great. And by the way, great session, Gabby. Love to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ankur.
Thank you. Please share your name also. I think I think it's Jay.
Jay Lembu, yeah.
Jay, I'm also waiting on your next edition.
I was just
your guide.
Right. I was just talking with Jeff and Ronald about that. So even I'm really excited for version 3. And definitely, we'll keep you updated, Gabby.
That's awesome. Yeah, I referenced it a lot when I was... Actually, when I took on my new role at Grapevine, I went to your section on hiring, and it was so useful. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's awesome. And to give a context, Gabby has given us an interview in one of our Community Builders Guide version 2. And you can learn a lot about fun facts about Gabby. Yeah.
Sure. If you can, share it in the chat.
Definitely. Yeah, I'll send the links.
Yeah, it's an amazing resource that Jay and Jeff and
Ronald
have been making. 2 editions. It's fantastic.
Awesome. Nice meeting you again. Bye.
Yeah, too.
Great meeting you as well. I think we have one question left. I think we can squeeze a quick response. If you don't have any questions, if you have a question, we can take that up. Else we can finish the last one.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take this up. What are some community event ideas in terms of, you already mentioned, you hinted about 3 different sessions you have monthly. So for a community builder, what kind of events are essentially when you're just getting started. Let's figure out that part. I think a lot of people are getting started, and a lot of them have figured it out. So for early community builders, what are the event ideas to bring people together?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say, where's my sandwich? Just lost you. Oh, here we go. Things that are based in just connecting, like we do these happy hours and we keep them, member mixers, which we keep to an hour, keep them short, have them be really structured, give people an agenda beforehand so they know what to expect. And then if you're going to do panels or workshops, really listen to the need of the community, what's out there. So you're making events that actually resonate with people and they want to come to. And then one thing I'd also say is we have it's a free tool. I think if you upgrade, you pay more, but it's called Menti, MENTI. It's this really amazing sort of word cloud, and people can, it's just a nice way to engage your community in a really simple way and visually. So say your community, you want to figure out what the values of the community are, like what people care about in your community. You could do like a values workshop or event with your community where you're utilizing a tool like Menti, and people are basically just writing a value that's really meaningful to them. And then what the tool does, you can pull it up on your screen like we've got this presentation right now, and it'll, based on how many people are putting in the same value, those words will actually become bigger, and ones where not as many people have mentioned will be smaller. So it's just a really cool visual way to connect people and for people to understand the shared values they have. So I would say using a tool like that for an event is really cool. And maybe you're just figuring out the values of your work, of your community, and connecting people in that way, and really make them think about time. Think about like how much time you're asking of people, and also different time zones. So doing events at different times so you can be more inclusive of people is really, really useful. And then if something's not working, like I find that when you're doing, I know that a lot of community managers always say experiment, test things out, like, yes, definitely, but also have a critical eye of the things you're testing out. And I think this is something I learned a lot from my current boss, is like experiment, but evaluate those experiments and have metrics beforehand, like what is successful, and if it didn't work, iterate. Like just don't keep doing the same thing without really being critical of what's working and what's not, and strategizing. So I would say yes, experiment, but don't experiment if you don't have a plan for that experiment.
Got it. I think measuring the right stuff. So you have too many metrics right now. So deciding on the right metrics to measure. Say you're hosting an event. How do you find it? Was it useful for your users? How do you find that? You need to find the right metrics for it. And so on and so forth. So building out a community, are you achieving the goal that you set forth while building the community? You can measure that, say with a questionnaire or something like that. Yeah, I think that is essentially very important. And getting people together, as you mentioned, I think Menti is the tool you mentioned, right? So I think we'll try that out as well. And anything that brings people together to do together on some idea or some workshop, that'll create engagement. I think Gabby has shared her LinkedIn link, and you can connect with her. Anyone else who wants to share the link, please do, and we'll connect together on different platforms. And I think we've come to the end of our community builders session for this month. And thanks, Gabby, for joining us. And I got to learn a lot. I'm hopeful that everyone else also had found value in the session we did. And I think it was very exciting learning about your background in community building to the non-profit space, and also how to think about sort of building out engagement in the community with events and so on and so forth. Thanks a lot for joining in. I would love to have you again. A lot of for the session. Thanks everyone for joining in. Any last words you want to conclude the session with?
No, thank you so much for having me. It's always like such a pleasure when I reached out by you guys to speak. So I'm really appreciative of that. And if you want to learn more about Grapevine, just visit grapevine.org. It's a really cool model for communities. So a great way to engage your community also and bring them together and also have them give back. And then connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to hear from you. And thanks for taking the time to listen. Thank you.
Thank you. And we're getting comments that people are liking the session from Rosie and Rachel. And thanks for joining in. We'd love to have you again in the next session. Bye-bye for now.
Bye.